condemning violence across the board, what is needed to cool down the temperature, and what are our next steps in America and as a country, and young people specifically. Charlie Kirk was a big figure in garnering support for Donald Trump in the last election, and a very influential one in my generation. And so branching out of that, where do we go from here? And with that, I will leave it over to Derek.
All right. And that's a tall podium, huh? I'm not that short. Let's see. Put this down here. All right. Well, thank y'all for allowing me to be here today. It's an honor to get to speak to you. And
I may move this out.
okay. Let me put that down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
I just don't want you to still on air.
Thank you. Taking care of me. So, all right. So, so I'm chairman of the Louisiana Republican Party, and this is my second time being here. So, thank you for allowing me to come back. And I do want to talk a little bit about the party, my role as chairman, and then I do want to talk about the events almost 2 weeks ago now with Charlie Kirk and what's happened there. So, but people often ask me, what do you do as chairman of the LA GOP? And obviously, my first role is to lead the organization, to set a vision for the organization. And I've got a little campaign that I've kicked off within the party. And I've asked everybody, why do we do what we do as Republicans, as people who are active in the Republican Party, go to these meetings, give money, go to support candidates and things like that? And it's because we want to leave a legacy for future generations. We want to leave a legacy. We want to leave our state in a better place and our country in a better place. And so for us to do that, I believe as Republicans, we need to win races so that when you win, you lead. But in order to do that, we've got to be united. And, it's no secret there's division within every organization. If you've got people involved, there's going to be some division involved. And in my opinion, we can have a different opinion about things and we can debate without being divided. And so I'm encouraging all Republicans across the state, and certainly the members of our State Central Committee, that we all handle our differences in a respectful way, in a compassionate way, and in a united way, so that we can be united for the sake of winning races, for the sake of leaving a legacy for our state. And so I've challenged all of our members. I've created this challenge coin with Unity, Victory, Legacy on the back. And so that's part of my role as leading and setting a vision. Obviously, fundraising is a part of my role, candidate recruitment and support, election strategy and operations. We help develop campaign strategies. We don't necessarily run campaigns, but we do help candidates in coming up with a good strategy for winning. Voter turnout is a big part of what we do. Obviously, we want to get our Republican base out to vote, and voter registration is part of that. And that's part of growing the party itself. And I'll tell you, when I took over as chairman, we were 137,000 registrations behind the Democrats. I believe when I spoke here about a year ago, we were 86,000 behind, and I can tell you as of today, we're 42,000 behind Democrats. So we were very quickly gaining to surpass Democrats in Louisiana. Democrat registrations, we have surpassed Democrats in active voters. So there are more registered active voters that are Republican than there are Democrats. So first milestone. Communications and media is another part of what I do. I'm the chief spokesman. I'm the contact for media inquiries. Party infrastructure, I oversee the headquarters and the staff. We have 4 staff members at our office and then a consultant. I chair meetings, the State Central Committee, Executive Committee meetings, those things. And then I ensure compliance with financial campaign finance and then with election laws. And I have Eddie Risponi. Some of y'all probably know Eddie Risponi, ran for governor several years ago. He's actually my finance chair, and so he actually does a really good job helping us to raise money and stay compliant as well. And then coalition building, that's working with other Republican groups. There's the RPECs in each parish. There's different independent groups, LFRW, Republican Women. There's a Pachyderms Club. We work with those groups. We work with We even work with some faith groups. We work with the National RNC, and Turning Point USA is a group that we work with, and I'm very closely connected to. I actually had the privilege to speak with Charlie Kirk when I won my chairman's race, and he called and congratulated me. And they've actually had myself and other, as a member of the state, as a chair or a national committee person, you are a member of the national RNC, and so there are quite a few of us who are considered allies for Turning Point USA, and so we're able to attend a lot of their different events, and so I've had the privilege of being able to do that numerous times, and I know there's another one coming up. But, you know, in line with coalition building, that's even with our elected officials, with our state legislators, our governor, and I want to brag just for a minute on our governor. He's taken over just over a year and a half ago, and, you know, very quickly he's done what a lot of people would say is almost impossible to do, and that's, you know, I feel like we were headed in a very wrong direction and not much was being done about it. And crime was one of the major issues, and that was the very first special session he called was for crime, and set up Troop NOLA in New Orleans. He's taken on crime. We have now, many of you have heard about Camp 57 or Louisiana Lockup. Louisiana is doing its part to help take these alien criminals off the streets. And so Secretary Nome was down here a couple weeks ago to announce Camp 57. And you know, look, we may potentially have the National Guard brought down here to New Orleans. That's to be determined, but I know President Trump has talked about doing that. The governor supports that. I support that. And look, it's effective. When they put the National Guard in Washington, D.C., very quickly started to turn the tide on crime. I think since then they've arrested over 1,800 criminals. They've taken 200 illegal firearms off the streets. Violent crime in Washington, D.C. has been reduced 25% since the National Guard came in. Carjackings are down 85%. Robberies are down 42%. Those aren't small numbers. That's a big difference in a community. People feel a lot safer when crime starts to come down like that. Governor Landry has taken on education, done a lot to reform education. And look, I've seen numerous statistics, but whatever ones you look at, you'll see 2 years ago we were in the 40s nationally in education. Today we're in the high to mid 20s. So that is a big step in the right direction for education in Louisiana, better educating our young children. He lowered the personal income tax. We're now the lowest in the southern states at 3%. And he reformed our tax code. He simplified the tax code to encourage business and industry to grow here in Louisiana. And he's done a lot to attract business and industry to Louisiana. We've got over $70 billion in new economic development projects that have come into Louisiana. So that's opportunity for our kids. When he was running for governor, he talked about revitalizing our state, creating opportunities so our children don't have to move to Texas or Florida to find opportunity. And with $70 billion in new projects, they're going to have the opportunity to stay here in Louisiana. Last year, while we've consistently had a net loss of population, last year we actually had a net gain of 30,000 in population. So again, we're headed in the right direction. And then, of course, this last session, insurance was the big topic. And I know we were somewhat divided on, you know, how to fix the problem. Everybody agreed on the problem. We all know we're paying the highest rates in the country, but we were a little bit divided on how that problem got solved. But look, I think at the end of the day, a lot of good things happened, and we're starting to see the results. I'm actually an insurance agent myself. I'm a broker. Any company that writes insurance in Louisiana, I have contracts with these companies. So when the companies leave, my job gets harder because I don't have as many carriers that I can shop, and I want to try to find the lowest rate for my client. And when you only have 5 instead of 30, it's a lot more difficult. But today we have a lot of new carriers that have come back to Louisiana, a lot that are looking to come back, and then we are actually starting to see rate decreases, which is fantastic because even if we had gotten everything everybody wanted this last session, you could not have expected for rates to come down this quickly. Typically, the way insurance companies work is they want to see the effects of whatever changes you make, and they want some sort of historical data before they make changes. And yet, what we've got now is rate increases coming in for this year in insurance. So we're headed in the right direction. So I want to talk about political violence. I know Liam, he and I talked the other day, and it was a tragedy what happened to Charlie Kirk. I was watching, I'm sure many of y'all are watching when this happened, and then of course, as the event unfolded, and what's his condition, and just the tragic loss of somebody who, such a talented guy at such a young age, who had done so much to influence, I'm going to say a young generation. And I'm 52 years old. I don't know that I even fit in that group anymore, but he inspired me as well. And so he's inspired so many, but specifically the young generation. And for me, when I took over as chairman, obviously voter outreach is a big priority. And, people say, oh, look, you need to do minority outreach. You need to do Latino outreach. You need to do all these outreach. And look, I agree. But I told them, I said, my passion really is the youth. I feel like we are losing our youth. And so, regardless of what race or nationality or whatever, I want that young generation. I want to go after them. And that's what Charlie Kirk really did. He had, he spoke on hundreds of college campuses around the country. And I'll just read briefly what I had written about Charlie. Charlie was a young visionary who founded Turning Point USA. He was 18 years old, founded it with a laptop, a borrowed desk, and a vision. He built it into one of the largest student movements in the country. His mission was to inspire a generation with faith, freedom, and the principles of our founding fathers. He gave people the courage to stand up, speak truth, and live with conviction. His legacy is not what he built, but the millions he empowered to lead. And he certainly did inspire a generation. And he inspired them to think about, what do you believe and why do you believe it? And then have the courage to stand up for it. And, what happened to him was tragic. And I'm going to say something that bothers me. There was a resolution that Speaker Johnson actually wrote the resolution, and wrote it specifically so that it was not a partisan resolution. It didn't contain any language that talked about Charlie Kirk's faith, but it was a resolution that did 5 things. It condemned in the strongest manner possible. It condemned in the strongest possible terms the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It commended and honored law enforcement. It extended deep condolences to Charlie Kirk's family. It honored the life, leadership, and legacy of Charlie Kirk. And it called upon all Americans to reject political violence. Thought it was a pretty good resolution. And our 2 Louisiana Democrat congressmen voted against that resolution. And I just got to say, if we as Republicans and Democrats cannot stand together against murder, then our politics has lost its soul. I'm going to tell you, Louisiana Republicans believe in winning arguments based on substantive debates and facts, not by silencing our opponents with violence. And I'm troubled, and I hate to hear. I would deeply respect our 2 Democrat members of Congress, but again, if we cannot come together to condemn this kind of violence, we're in trouble. When political passions turn into violence, we all lose. No one is serving their cause. When you do something like this, you only undermine your cause. And when you look at, this assassin tried to silence a voice he didn't like, to silence the voice of Charlie Kirk. And really what he's done is he's undermined his own cause. By trying to silence Charlie Kirk, you've inspired so many that looked up to him. And, you look around and now you see on the news and a lot of places where you go, young people, old people, people wearing these signs saying, I am Charlie Kirk. And so what they've done is they didn't, they might have silenced the voice, but they didn't silence the movement. And so, I believe they have actually awakened the sleeping giant. And, Charlie Kirk was an evangelist first. He was there to stand up for his faith first. But I believe what Charlie recognized was that when you touch the systems that touch society, you change a culture. You change a culture by touching people's hearts and minds. And when you touch their hearts and minds, you change their culture. And, our problem right now is not that we don't have enough gun laws, because criminals don't pay attention to the laws. The problem right now is the culture of our society. And, we've created a society where people call truth hate, where they call disagreement intolerance, accountability they call abusive. You set boundaries on people, they say you're unkind. You're direct, they say you're attacking them. We've created a generation where if you don't agree with someone's version of reality, you automatically become the enemy. And people don't want truth, they want comfort. They want comfort for their disillusions. They don't want help. They want to be validated. They don't want to grow. They want to stay stuck and feel good about it. And we're teaching the next generation that love means never being challenged. And that true love, true love will challenge you, even when it's not comfortable. And look, I'm going to bring up the issue of the transgender issue. And I know this was something Charlie Kirk spoke a lot about. And this is very close to home for me, because I have a niece who struggles with this. And, for somebody to say love means that I affirm this idea that you believe you need to be something other than who God created you to be, that you've got to mutilate your body to be accepted and to be loved. That's not love. Love is you're fearfully and wonderfully made by Almighty God who created the heavens and the earth, everything within it. He knew you before He formed you in your mother's womb, and you're born with a plan and a purpose for your life. And if you don't understand that plan and purpose, then I'd like to walk with you through that and help you and give you hope. And these people who are so confused about who they are and feel like they have to mutilate their bodies to be something that they're not created to be in order to be happy, and yet they're not happy. When you look at suicide rates, you're about, and I was looking up statistics, about 3% of high school, college students fall into this transgender area, and the suicide rate is about 26% in that group of people. Typically, suicide rate is around 5%, and if you look at evangelicals, there's no hard data, but they suspect it's about 5 times less when you're actively involved in church and in your faith. And so, again, we've raised this culture where people believe that love is just affirming someone in their bad idea or what they believe instead of speaking truth to them, and truth that brings hope. And so that's what Charlie Kirk was about. Charlie Kirk showed a generation that courage and conviction still has a place in the public square. And I think what you're seeing today, people ask us, how do we get involved? These young people, right now, there's so many emotions going on. They're upset, they're angry, they're sad, but they're motivated. They want to make a difference. They want to honor Charlie Kirk's legacy, and so they want to know, how do I get involved? And so I've told them, look, first, go to church. I think it's a good way to start, to get involved. But the other is form a group. If there's not a group already on your campus, form a group. And we're telling high school students, there used to be these teenage Republican groups, TARS groups in high schools, and there haven't been any. So we've actually started some. We've got a couple now that are starting up, and so we're encouraging high school groups, start a group. Look, and I've encouraged them, get into a speech and debate class. I mean, look, it's important, number one, to know what you believe, but then why you believe it, and then equip yourself to be able to stand up for it. And so we're encouraging people to do that. And then the other is to be courageous. And I love what J.D. Vance said yesterday at the service. And he talked about his faith, and he talked about how he was, for so long, a little apprehensive to talk about his faith in public, and yet now that's different. And so he is going to be more vocal. And so I love that. I think 2 weeks ago, America changed. And it was a tragic event that happened, but I do believe that there is a great awakening and a revival that's coming to this country. And I'm proud to see that happen. So as a Republican Party, we're going to do everything we can to support it and encourage these young people to get involved. And look, I know I have a meeting at 1:30 in Livingston Parish, so I do need to end a little bit early. I know I do want to leave some time for questions. I know there's some questions maybe about midterm elections coming up. Obviously, we're waiting to see what the Supreme Court does October 15th. And so, if things change, then I anticipate we'll probably see a map very similar to what we had prior to the last redistricting. But I'd like to go ahead and just entertain any questions we have, if that's, is that good?
Derek, starts off, and
Okay.
just repeat the question after anyone asks.
Okay.
You talked a lot about condemning political violence, talked about we need to come together under these common ideals, and yet yesterday at Charlie Kirk's funeral, the president did say he hates his opponents and that he needs help from people like Eric Kirk to help him find a way to find peace and community there. What do you make of those comments, and what do you think is needed from our national leadership?
I think we live in some very, I'm trying to think of the word here, but just sensitive times, and look, I stand for free speech, you're not free from the consequences of your speech, and I think you have to be very careful when your speech incites violence like this. Now, to give an opinion of someone, you got that right to do that, and, to say he hates his opponents, look, I don't know that he hates his opponents personally. I think he hates the things that his opponents do. And so probably needs to be a little more clear about that. But, again, I don't think differences necessarily mean divides. I think we need to be respectful in the way that we disagree. And, look, it gets heated. And I appreciate the passions in debate oftentimes, but again, at the end of the day, we've got to remember to be respectful towards everyone, and look, in everything we do, to love other people. And there are people that I disagree with wholeheartedly. I love them as a person, but I just completely disagree with them in so many other ways. And so, look, I think we do need to be careful with our speech. But again, we've got the right to free speech. We just don't have the right to avoid the consequences of that speech. Yeah.
That doesn't answer the question.
Okay.
I mean, Donald Trump is doing exactly the opposite of what you're telling people. How do you justify that?
Well, I don't believe Donald Trump is inciting any sort of violence in saying that. Certainly he's giving his opinion of how he feels towards someone or something they've done, but I don't feel that he's incited any sort of violence in that way. So, would I say it the same way? Probably not, but I don't think he's wrong in expressing his opinion. That's what, everyone has that right to do that. So, I don't know. Does that answer your question anyway?
I guess my question for you more broadly is the role of our commander-in-chief to be unified, or to sow words like hate in America.
To sow words like hate, or to say he hates his opponent? I can say that I hate what someone's done, but look, I think that, hateful words or to say someone's wrong about something is not hateful, but I think it's as leaders in the community, you should be thoughtful about the things you say. But I believe in so many ways, Trump has united people. And so, certainly he stands for values that are different from our opponents, essentially. And so, look, I could say, I hate that somebody, I'm pro-life. I hate that somebody is pro-abortion, because I believe we should be protecting the most innocent lives among us. So, I don't hate them in the sense that I want to condemn their soul to hell or anything like that, but certainly hate what that person stands for. So, you know, hopefully that works. All right. All right. Yeah.
It's no secret that going into the 2023 gubernatorial election, the Republican Party, Louisiana Republican Party, was deeply in debt. Finances arguably were in complete disarray, with the problem being solved by an endorsement of Jeff Landry with an agreement that that debt would be paid off by that campaign. What do you say to the folks who still have, you talk about togetherness, what do you say to assuage the concerns of people who still have a very sour taste in their mouth about that whole process?
Well, let me make sure I understand now. Which process are you talking about? Like as far as
Process of the Louisiana GOP giving the exclusive endorsement to Jeff Landry without even a real competition.
Oh, okay. So the early endorsement is, you're asking about? Yes, yes. Okay. So the way the endorsement process works is you have 230 elected members of the State Republican Central Committee. They are essentially the legislative body of the Republican Party. And then there is, of course, the executive committee that handles the day-to-day. And the way the endorsements work is if the executive committee receives a request from a majority of the body of the RSCC to do that endorsement, then they review those requests and then honor that request to endorse. And so that's what happened there, was that more than half, and I was secretary at the time, and so I actually received those letters and verified all of them, and then our chairman as well did a second verification. And so we had well over a majority of the members' requests that we endorse Jeff Landry as our nominee for governor. And so the executive committee met, reviewed those, and took the vote and honored that request to endorse. So that was not the request of anyone within the party who wanted that done. That was the request of the majority of the party to do it. I think the idea behind it was that they saw maybe a contentious race coming up. They wanted to try to get people together early to be united behind one candidate. Obviously, it's a jungle primary in the governor's race. And so my sense is the idea was to try to get behind somebody early to get some momentum. And again, it was the majority of the committee that made that request. So that's how that was done.
Financial incentive in that regard?
A financial incentive to do it? No, there was no financial incentive to do
So
it.
the Republican
Nothing.
Party was not deeply in debt
I don't know. I don't believe the party was in debt, and I do know there was no financial incentive put in place to endorse Jeff Landry. So, yeah. We have some agreements now with waterfall agreements in place. Those are all, legal and customary. But prior to Jeff being the governor, there was no commitment to do anything. And the party was actually in fairly sound position at that time. So, okay. Go ahead.
Just real quick. You mentioned how going forward you want the focus of the state's party to be primarily on the youth and getting the youth more involved. You
Yeah.
spoke about encouraging them to attend church and create their own groups on campuses and stuff like that. But more broadly speaking, does the state party plan on doing anything more than that to get involved and try and reach the younger generation, like partnering with Louisiana Young Republicans or anything of that sort?
Yeah. And we have some great young Republican groups coming together, some great people involved in those groups. And so, yeah, we're very involved in trying to help the young Republicans and get new chapters started. There's, like I said, there's teenage Republicans. We're trying to get that going again. And then, we're doing a lot to try to outreach to do that. We're working with Turning Point now to try to get some chapters set up. There's been quite a few requests. Like I said, I think it was 65,000 last I heard across the country. Quite a few of those have come from Louisiana. And so, yeah, we're trying to get those things set up to encourage youth and do some voter registration, some education. Again, we've got this conference coming up November 1st where, we're trying to get youth there. We've actually partnered with some donors to scholarship some people to be there. And so we're going to have education. We're going to have just a lot of encouragement. We have some great speakers lined up, and then we got a special performance by John Foster from American Idol. A lot of the young people know who that is, and so we're going to have a good time, and I think that's going to be another way to help empower these young people to go back and start groups. One next. Yes, ma'am.
You use the pronoun they, silence Charlie Kirk. What are you basing the they rather than?
They, okay, I said they silenced Charlie Kirk, and so I would say they as in, there's an opposition to what Charlie Kirk said. They is, in my opinion, is just, it's sort of a cultural difference to what he said. I mean, it's not to say that everyone who shares an opinion different to Charlie Kirk would have done something like that, but certainly there were people out there who would have, and one did. And so, specifically, whatever the guy's name is, Tyler, whatever, pulled the trigger. But, there's they, meaning people who are, don't try to mischaracterize what I'm saying here now. I understand a man pulled the trigger, but there is deep opposition to what Charlie Kirk said. And I think we, as Democrats and Republicans, need to be speaking out against this kind of violence so that those people who are capable of doing what this one man did are not encouraged to go do that to somebody else. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
Eric, you brought up something about the last session, legislative session. There was some infighting you saw between the insurance commissioner and the governor. What was going through your head when all that was going on? I mean, and should the battlefield of words be on Twitter? Look, I'm not a big fan of the keyboard warriors and these people who just hide behind screens and throw these outrageous comments out, and but it's the reality of our world today that social media is very influential in society. And so, yeah, things get said on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. But, what was going through my head, of course, look, everybody agreed on the problem. The governor had his ideas for how to solve the problem. The commissioner had his ideas. In a lot of ways, they meshed. There were a few ways that they did not. And so, for myself, I'm trying to keep people together, trying to keep the debate respectful, and, trying to do what I can to help move the process along. And I think at the end of the day, some great things were accomplished. And I think we're starting to see the results of that. So, but for me, yeah, I work with both of them. I consider both of them to be friends. And so I was just trying to kind of keep the temperature down a little bit. Would you say that situation and that infighting makes it more difficult for you to be able to be that unifier at your position?
Well, certainly, yeah. Yeah, it challenges me. Yeah, there are people within the State Central Committee that have some ideas that are maybe a little more passionate or just different than our ideas. And again, we don't have to agree 100% on everything to be friends or to be respectful towards each other. We can have differences. A friend of mine told me if we always agree, then one of us isn't needed, right? So different ideas are okay, but certainly it's the temperature of the debate that we just need to be careful about. And again, we can be united without agreeing all the time. So, yeah.
Take two more.
Yes, sir.
I want to commend you on meeting privately with the governor to say that you and he just have to agree to disagree on this. But there was also a bill sponsored by Representative Dixon McMakin that would, according to Woody Jenkins, would have essentially probably, you talked about tax earlier, would have probably resulted in his ouster. It was very confrontational with the legislation by former Representative Jenkins' part. And that the belief is that was in total retaliation for Jenkins's very open opposition to the Constitutional amendments back in March. what are your thoughts on that? I know you went and met privately with the
Yeah.
governor and said, look, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. I don't think this is a good measure. So can you
Well-
elaborate this? Because you're talking about not having divisiveness, and yet you have the governor of the state advancing that bill, which sure looked like political retribution. So
And look, and let me say that I did ask to go meet with him. When I got there, he said, "What bill? What does this do?" And so he was not involved in any way that I'm aware of in advancing that bill. But I was opposed to that bill. And look, Dixon is a very good friend of mine. I love Dixon. I really do. A lot of fun to hang out with. Great guy. And now the voice of LSU Tigers, right? So, great guy. But I did not agree with what Dixon was doing, Representative McMakin. And so I was going to go oppose that bill. And so I did. When I do that, I wanted to let everyone know and let the governor know that I would be there in committee to oppose that bill. But again, when I got there, he wasn't even familiar with the bill. I had to tell him what it was. He said, "That's fine. You do what you need to do," and so I did. And we beat that bill. And I think that it was right that we beat that bill. And Dixon had his reasons for doing it. He wanted more involvement. There are some other PECs that have elected members on their state reps on their PECs, but that's by their choosing, not by the legislature forcing that down their throats. And so we do have constitutional rights that protect private party from being run by government. And so I went there and made that argument, and I'm very thankful that we prevailed in that argument. So, huh? No? All right. Well, I appreciate y'all. Thank you. All right. All right. Appreciate you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. Now I got to run.
Okay,
So,
get out of here, run.
Okay, shooter.
Me? Always.
yeah,
When I hit him up, I'm like, you want this one? Go to their board. So